Well, welcome, both of you. I am so honored to have you here, part of this summit. And for those of you that don't know, Tristan and Michael are the co-founders of UltraSpeaking, and they help professionals, individuals, creators, business owners speak more confidently. And they have a really successful cohort business on public speaking. And I've actually gone through part of it. So I'm excited to be coached by both of you today. But why don't you all jump into your presentation? I know you're going to pull me back in here in a couple minutes, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Wonderful. I'm going to share my screen this way. That way it's a little bit more immersive. And thank you so much, Alexis. Thanks for the intro. I'm always so energized to be around lots of creators and entrepreneurs. There's the starter energy that really, really drives me. So I want to share my intention for this talk, and I want to make a promise. My intention is to change the way you see or you look at speaking skills and communication training in general. I'm hoping that by the end of this, you never look at communication training the same way at your speaking skills. And I also want to make a promise. At the end of this speech, Michael's going to come in and we're going to coach Alexis, and we'll be sharing a method that I think will change the way you prepare content for the rest of your life, whether it's a YouTube video, Instagram, a keynote, a podcast intro, anything prepared. This changed the game for us, and I'm hoping it's going to change the game for you as well. So let's jump in. We have to start with this here, training wheels. I'm sure most of you learned how to ride a bike with training wheels. It's those two wheels that you put at the back of your bicycle and that take away the problem of trying to find your balance. I spent probably 2 years on training wheels before moving to a bicycle, because the promise is if you spend enough time on the training wheels, once you get to the bicycle, it's going to be super easy. But the reality was very, very different, at least for me and most of my friends. The reality is, when I got on a bicycle, it felt like I was starting over again. And it was lots of pain, lots of suffering, lots of frustration and crying from me, from my dad, who was helping me out. And so when 30 years later, more or less, I became a dad and I was looking for training wheels for my son who was ready to start riding a bicycle, my friend said, "Oh, you shouldn't do training wheels. That thing doesn't work. You should get a balance bike." So you can imagine my surprise when I discovered this thing. This is called a balance bike. For the younger generation here, I imagine a lot of you know this. I had no idea what this was. A balance bike is a smaller version of a bike that doesn't have pedals. So there's no need to learn how to ride with pedals. It's super low, so you can push off the ground. And all of the attention is spent on finding your balance. This is my son Max when he was 3 years old, and you can see him on his balance bike. This is a few days in. He's learning how to spend as much time as possible without touching the ground. And here's the magic. This is the day after I bought Max his first bike a couple years later. So Max didn't know how to ride a bike. He just spent all his time on his balance bike. And then suddenly, within hours, barely, he knows how to ride a bike as if he'd been doing it his whole life. Just so smooth. The pedals it turns out, are super intuitive. The hard part is the balance. How do you balance? How do you manage speed and velocity and momentum for your turn? So I kind of felt swindled, to be honest. Looking back at it, I'm thinking, man, there's so many generations that spend months or years on these training wheels. And for what? If it didn't really help us get better at the thing we wanted to get better at, what was the point? And then you start thinking, well, where else? Where else am I on training wheels instead of being in the balance bike? Well, communication training is one of those. And it's very frustrating to me because this is my world now. I'm in this world of communication training. And if you look around, most of the advice you're going to find and most of the trainings you will find are actually training wheels. They're not the balance bike. They're not preparing you for the right thing. And the reason I'm so passionate about this, or at least one of the reasons, is because I'm obsessed with learning. Rapid learning, rapid skill acquisition, that's a thing that defines my life and has been since I've been a kid. To the point where when Scott Young was writing this book, Ultra Learning, and he reached out to his audience asking who wanted to be a guinea pig to potentially become a case study for his book, I jumped on this opportunity, volunteered immediately. And I was really lucky that one of my friends suggested I try to take on public speaking because it's a meta skill. One of those skills where the better you get at it, the better all of your life gets. It transfers to so many different things. And this led me to a genuine fork in the road, this was a life-changing event for me because from here, I made it most of chapter 3 of Ultra Learning with Michael. I signed up for the World Championships of Public Speaking. And as a complete novice with no experience, just 10 days before the beginning, and over the course of 7 months of the craziest journey of my life, the most intense, grueling learning journey, I made it to the finals. This is me on the final stage. And there were 30,000 people from over 140 countries that we had to get through it. This is still one of the best days of my life. I'm in Michael's arms after winning the semifinals and qualifying for the finals, something that obviously felt completely impossible prior to this competition, to jumping into this journey. But here's where it gets interesting. Just a month later, I'm in this mastermind group with a coach that Michael and I had. We're on Zoom, so it's low stakes. We're on Zoom. There are about a dozen people in this class. And Nathan, our coach, asks me to lead a little 3-minute impromptu educational speech. Hey, you have 3 minutes, teach us something. And I have no time to prepare, maybe a few minutes to think about it. And I'm at the pinnacle. Just a month later, I was on the final stage of the World Championships in front of 3,000 people. And it was a nightmare. It felt like I was a beginner all over again. My heart's beating out of my chest. I'm feeling a level of anxiety I haven't felt since the first day of my training, and nothing feels right. I don't know where to start. I don't have any of what I had relied on. And what I realized was, oh shit, I'd been on training wheels this whole time. Because if we break down our practice, this is how I was practicing with Michael, 50% of my time was spent on writing. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours over the course of 6 to 7 months, I spent writing and editing. And if you're writing and editing for that much time, then every word counts. Every single comma counts. So you need to memorize it. So I'd go to the gym and go on a treadmill or a Stairmaster because I'd read somewhere that if you're doing exercise while you're memorizing, it sticks more. And I spent hours and hours and hours on that Stairmaster, getting glutes of glorious glutes and memorizing everything. And this is me on the World Championship stage. This is from the finals here. Imagine you have spent hundreds of hours writing and editing, and then hours and hours memorizing. Now you have something that's super static and written, not made for speaking, although you tried your best. Now you have to try to make it look completely natural. And this is me trying to look very natural. And I'll tell you this, everything I am doing, every single movement of my hand, where I look, how I move, my facial expressions, all of that is pre-planned. There's not a step I take here that I don't know I'm taking. So all of my practice was somewhat artificial. And of course, this is extreme, but in many ways, this is a lot of what we do, right? When we need to prepare, we spend so much time on paper, writing and memorizing and trying to then make it look supernatural. But how is this supposed to prepare me for the real world? The real world looks like this. As creators or entrepreneurs or professionals, we're in meetings, we're leading meetings, we're running courses, we're podcast guests or podcast hosts. And then you have the social events or the networking events where I want to be fluid. I want to feel like myself. So it makes sense that my skills were more like the training wheels and not the balance bike. They didn't prepare me for this. So what does it take? That's the $1 million question. What does it take for my skills to transfer to the real world? Well, to me, this very, very simple slide is the most beautiful slide in the world because it describes exactly what the balance bike is supposed to look like. I want something that incentivizes me to be beautifully imperfect, naturally authentic. I want to be quick on my feet. I want to have my ideas just flowing in my mind right there when I need them. I always want to be ready. I don't want to spend months writing and preparing. And I want to be adaptable because what I did there, and when I'm speaking, I knew that my speech couldn't be more than 7.5 minutes. So what I did was I crafted it in a way where it would last between 7 minutes and 12 seconds and 7 minutes and 18 seconds, because you need a little bit of buffer for that extra laughter if you're lucky. But if you asked me to give that same speech in 6 minutes, impossible. I'm talking about intuition. Ask me to run a workshop on it. Impossible. I just know how to do a 7 minute and 12 second or 18-second speech. So I want to be adaptable. I want to be able to talk about something that I'm passionate about in 1 minute, in 10 minutes, in 1 hour, or over 2 days as I lead a workshop. And as important, I want to feel ease. I want to feel like myself. I shouldn't be pushing a boulder up a hill. So all of this boils down to natural, confident presence. That's what I want. That's the balance bike of speaking. That's what we should be focused on. And that's what we've dedicated our life to creating with Michael with UltraSpeaking. So let's talk about you. What can you change today? So first off, if you were similar to me in this world of writing, memorizing, and then choreographing, whatever that meant for you, we got to get rid of that. Writing is only to get our ideas out or to clarify our thinking. But when we're getting ready for speaking, we need to be speaking. So very, very early on in the process, you want to start speaking as a means to prepare yourself. And we'll talk about this in the exercise that's coming up of why this is so valuable. And you're going to see it in action. Next, the memorizing. Memorizing is a truly deeply suboptimal, because the way I think about memorizing, I see it as a taut chain. So you imagine you have a chain that's nice and taut. When I memorize, I'm learning one link at a time, one word at a time, one sentence at a time. Take one link out of the chain and it's gone. I've lost it. I have no connection to it. And that's what leads to blanking and all of the anxiety, justifiably, that happens when you're reciting something from memory. But if instead you internalize everything and you find yourself more in like a beautiful tree with a big trunk and deep roots that's three-dimensional, where you've internalized all of your content so well that it doesn't matter which branch you're navigating through, you can always find yourself back to the center. There's always a sense of direction and understanding of where you're at. This is much more resilient and much more interesting and much more freeing. And here's the magic. The magic is no need to choreograph. No need to make it into something seemingly natural, because you're already natural. Now you have space for improvisation. You have space to genuinely navigate the world of speaking. And your goal is to connect with your audience. So when you have space to improvise, space to be yourself, you get to connect, you get to be yourself. And that's what we're all looking for. That's the balance bike. So let's see this in action. I made a promise at the beginning of this talk that I would share a remarkable method that can change the way you prepare forever. Whether it's a YouTube video, podcast interview, intro, a meeting, a keynote, doesn't matter. This method is called the Accordion method. And for this, I'm going to bring in my fellow co-conspirator, co-creator of UltraSpeaking, my mentor and coach during the World Championships, Mr. Michael Gendler, who's going to be guiding Alexis through this. And Alexis, who is extremely brave, willing to jump in and be our student for the next 10 minutes.
Fantastic. Awesome. So what's going to be beautiful about the next 10, 15 minutes is everything that you're going to see is going to be created live in the moment, which is exactly what we're looking for. If we want to create a preparation tool, we want to see it in action. We want to see the stages of preparation unfold. We don't want to see just the polished final product. So what you're about to see is Alexis go through a few rounds of the accordion method. And I really want to emphasize, with every round, notice what changes. How does the content evolve, and how does Alexis's speaking change as we go from rep to rep? And so Alexis, first of all, thanks for doing this. This takes a lot of guts.
I'm excited. I'm ready. I am in preparation. I am like setting aside any desire or need to be perfect. I think that's like a big part of this process is like, this is me. I don't know what's going to come out, but we're here to learn and we're here to have fun.
That's perfect. Perfect mindset. Excellent. So what I'd like to ask from you is, imagine you wanted to record like a 2-minute video on a topic. So try to think of a topic that you're pretty familiar with. Maybe it's like stuff that you're well versed in, but you haven't thought it through. So we don't want like a polished, oh, I've written on this many times, but it's just a rough idea, because what we want to watch is that idea evolve through this method. So if you had to record a 2-minute video on a topic, what might that be?
How to start a podcast.
Love it. Okay, fantastic. Perfect. So let's do it. We're going to put Alexis first on a 2-minute timer. And then over the course of the next 5 minutes, we're going to see different reps where we start shrinking the time in half to see how the brain operates on different time constraints. So Alexis, for this first session, treat it like a total brainstorm. Get your ideas out and see what the 2-minute version can unlock for you.
Okay. And are you going to set the 2-minute timer?
Yeah, Tristan's going to share his screen. Do you see it on his end right there?
Let me actually change the view so everyone can see all of us. There we go. And I can see the timer. Okay.
Did you say 2 minutes, Michael?
Yeah, let's do 90 seconds just to
90 seconds.
Be mindful of time. And this will be draft number 1. Here we go, Alexis. You got this.
All right, starting a podcast. There's an aspect of starting a podcast that is sharing your voice. You have a specific message that you want to share that's important to you. Whether you're an expert or you have a really strong point of view or personality, there's something pulling you towards the idea of recording a podcast. But when it comes to starting, it's important to know why you want to start it and also the value that you hope to bring and unlock for a listener. So why does someone want to listen to your show? What value are they hoping to get? Is it education? Is it entertainment? Is it a source of connection with you? And when you're in build mode, build a show that you're excited to show up for every single day and hit record and publish and write show notes for and promote. And also build a show that someone else is going to share with their friend. There's going to be an aspect of hype, an aspect of, I can't wait for the next week's episode. And if you can optimize for those 2 strategies or even energies that you pull, I think that you can build and start a really phenomenal value-focused podcast for your brand.
Excellent. Give it up for Alexis. And that was just the rough draft. My goodness.
Okay.
Fantastic. So what I love about what you're doing is even on the first rep, you treated it like it was the real thing. And that makes a huge difference in your practice, to be able to commit from the very, very get-go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really well done. So what we're going to do in the accordion method is, now that you've gotten these ideas out, we're going to try to see what happens if we shrink the time for your brain. So now that you have less time, what you really want to be asking yourself is, okay, at the heart of it, what do I really want to say? My topic is how to start a podcast. What do I really really want to say, and be willing to bring fresh ideas that hit you in the moment.
Okay. How many seconds do I have?
This time you only get 60 seconds. The concept, when you think about the accordion, what we're doing is we're compressing time using time constraints, and that is forcing clarity. We're getting rid of all of the noise as we go. So if you're on the audience, I want you to pay attention to that. What is disappearing and what is sticking? And then when we get to the bottom, when we get to the essence of what we wanted to say, which is already going to be very deeply internalized, then we're going to expand the accordion again, open up the time, and that's going to allow us to intentionally, very carefully bring certain pieces back in. And now you're going to have a very different landscape in your mind. So it'll be really interesting for you to describe that to participants afterwards once we get to the expansion part. For now, we compress. So I'm giving you 2/3 of the time. You have 1 minute. You ready?
Perfect. I'm ready.
Here we go.
Starting a podcast is one of the most beautiful ways to build intimacy with an audience, because your listeners and the audience that is tuning in every week or even every day to your show, you are meeting them where they are in their environment. Meaning they're listening to you in the grocery store, in the gym, in their car, and you're becoming a part of their everyday life. And so when you're building that, respect that relationship that you're stewarding with your listener, and think about how you will deliver education, an aspect of entertainment, and also an aspect of vulnerability of them getting to know you and your specific point of view. The world doesn't need more of the same podcast. They need your specific voice and your specific story and how you plan to serve your audience.
Excellent. Excellent, Alexis. Fantastic. So I wrote down 3 things that might spark your brain. One of them was intimacy. I love that word. Another one was respect relationship. And the third one was your voice. We don't want the same podcast. We want something unique. So now we're going to compress the time even more. We're going to go to the 30-second version, and you almost have to choose, in a sense, of what you've shared so far. What really resonates with you? What's the thing that you care most about? Let's see what your brain comes up with.
Okay.
You got this.
Podcasts build intimacy with their listeners. And because there are so many options out there, when someone's choosing your podcast to listen to, it's because you have a specific point of view or a specific expertise that's drawing them in. And so as you're launching, build and optimize for that specific reason and that relationship that you're building with your listeners so that you can deliver value again and again and keep them coming back for more every week.
Crushing it. You're crushing it.
That one didn't feel like, I was a little bit more nervous. I felt like I was rushing a little bit more.
This almost always happens with the 30-second one. So I'm just going to have you go again.
Okay.
And if you're joining, I saw some new numbers coming in. If you're joining for the first time, Alexis is going through an incredibly powerful tool to prepare content in a way where you internalize the content and it doesn't feel rehearsed. It feels natural when you express it later. So right now we're compressing time to go down the accordion. You just did 30 seconds. I'm going to give you 30 seconds again. And so you just get another go right off the bat.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Podcasting is a vehicle for intimacy with your audience. You're meeting your audience where they are, and why they listen to you, only you know that. Whether it's for education or for inspiration or because you have a really strong, unique point of view. But when you're building and launching your show, try to optimize for that extreme relationship and intimacy that you're building with your listener, and don't get focused on anything else. Just focus on that relationship with them.
Beautiful. That felt different.
I know. I felt a little bit more passionate or like punchy with it, I guess, or opinionated.
Yeah. What made you feel that? How did you get there?
I think the confidence of doing it again and again and realizing, okay, I know what I want to say, but I'm going to say it in a way that feels a little bit more like passion focused. Maybe that's just the confidence piece coming in.
Yeah. Well, that's what I shared in the beginning when I was describing my previous method, which was writing everything until it felt perfect and then trying to memorize it. Now we're doing this through speaking. So every rep you're going through, as you're getting more clarity on what it is you actually want to say, you're also connecting to it more and more and internalizing it. So now you're feeling it more, you're more into it, and you're already able to express it from a different place with just a few reps. So it's the internalization is happening. We don't need the memorization anymore. So now we need to bring this up. Now you know what you want to hit. You know your intention, the one thing you're trying to share. Now we open up the accordion. And just for the sake of time, I want to bring you all the way back to 90 seconds. So 5 minutes ago, we saw you give a 90-second speech on how to start a podcast. You just went down the accordion. Now you go again. You have 3 times as much time as you just had. And you have that feeling that goes with it. So you get to connect. You ready?
I am ready.
Last rep. Here we go.
Yeah. Podcasts are a beautiful vehicle for building intimacy with your audience. And because you're an audience builder, you're a community builder, you're constantly thinking about how you can connect with that community. And why I love audio and love podcasting is because you can meet your listener where they are in their everyday life. So you're in their ear, in the grocery store, in the gym, in the car, and they're getting some sort of value from you, but you're also building a long-term relationship. I've been podcasting for over 8 years, and people in my audience know a lot about me. And we have this beautiful connection where we're DMing because we've built this relationship over time. And that is something that you can access too. So as you're building, get clear on the value you want to deliver to your audience, whether that's your unique expertise, your unique strong point of view, or you are a prolific storyteller, whatever your zone of genius is and how you want to show up in your podcast. Just remember that the most important number to track is the connections that you're building, not necessarily the listeners or the audience size, but really on the community and the power of what you're building with your listeners.
Excellent. Fantastic, Alexis.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Thank you both.
Share the love in the chat.
Yeah.
The chat is like literally fueling me right now. Thank you so much for being so kind.
Blowing up. I'm curious, Alexis, before we wrap up and take questions, as you're going through this process, what feels different for you about the final 90 second versus the initial 90 seconds?
I think the first 90 seconds, as you framed them, did feel low stakes because it felt like a brainstorm.
Yeah.
And then we're condensing down, we're shaping and refining the content. And then when you expand, not that the stakes get higher, but you maybe have more context and more of a direction on what you're trying to say.
Exactly. So through the process of just doing the reps and shaping the time constraints, you are refining your own ideas. But what I found most fascinating, and I'm curious if anyone in the chat saw this, it's like the more you kept going all the way to the final rep, it's almost like you started speaking from a very solid place of, I know where I'm going. Whereas in the beginning, you were kind of like, I'm curious what's going to come out. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to see the clarity that emerges in just a couple of minutes.
Fantastic exercise. Thank you both so much. This was This was awesome. And again, thank you for the chat, for being so kind.
Yeah.
I'll hand it back over to you two. We have about 10-ish minutes, and perfect. I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah, excellent. So we're going to take questions in just a minute. But I think where we want to end this talk is something that might be a recurring theme in all of the keynotes you're going to hear today, which is, if there is one shortcut to improve your speaking, one shortcut to connect with your audience and to essentially communicate better in the real world, it's to make this shift from impress mode to express mode. And it's something that is so subtle, but it's the difference between I hope I do well and I hope I sound smart to I hope this is valuable. It's the difference between, this is a performance. No, it's a conversation. And I think it's really, really unique to see that when people are in express mode, when they are genuinely being themselves, the Jennifer Lawrences and Brene Browns and Ryan Trahills of the world, we find them impressive as a byproduct. And especially in the age of authenticity, which is the era that we're entering, I don't know any quicker way to approach communication than to leave impress mode behind and step into a way of being that feels more like you, that feels more expressed, and that ultimately helps build connections with others. So with that, I first want to say thanks so much for allowing us to share this time with you. We're really, really passionate about speaking. And if you're curious about the accordion method and a couple other methods like the bow and arrow method for presentation crafting, which we didn't get into, the QR code on the left is pretty much our best thinking over the last 7 years on what methods help people succeed in speaking. And if you want to experience the balance bike of speaking for yourself, if you want to be the Alexis of today and dive into some training, probably the thing we do best is cohort-based courses so that you can experience a lot of the speaking firsthand. And that's the QR code on the right. And yeah, with that, we would love to take some questions with the time remaining. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I cannot speak more highly of going through a cohort experience with Michael and Tristan. And just really quick before we jump into questions, it's not just about building your speaking skills. There's also an aspect of laying down the ego and laying down the like performance mode that we can get into as professionals. That was like just great personal development for me as well, of just showing up imperfect. So that's actually why I said it before we got started, was like, it was a mindset frame of like, okay, I need to do this. So please go take one of their cohorts. Incredible. So question from Samir. One thing that I find difficult is maintaining eye contact with the camera, especially when thinking about the next sentence or the choice of the right word to say. And moving eyes around can sometimes give the impression of stress or anxiety. How do you deal with that?
There are two parts to that answer. The first is just practice. When I started the World Championship, I couldn't look at anybody. And anytime I had to think, I had to look down. This was in person, back in the old days. And I'm in person and I would look down. And then it was one of my goals to be able to look at people while I spoke. And little by little, I started getting more comfortable, less jittery, more familiar with the environment of being in front of a lot of people. And then my eyes started coming up and I would look behind people and I would look to the side. And then after a while, I got comfortable enough that I could actually look somebody in the eye while I was speaking to them and I could start connecting with them. So don't expect it to just happen. Why would you be naturally able to speak to a dead piece of metal and connect to it? There's no reason why it would work on the first try. So what I recommend is spend some time, just get a bunch of videos out, and after a while, it's going to feel completely normal to speak to a camera. The second piece is there is absolutely no issue while you're speaking to a camera to stop and think and then start speaking again. That's completely natural and human. And if you look at videos that aren't, the super fast-paced cut videos, then you'll notice people always do that. pay attention even in one-on-ones. When you're talking with a friend, they're not looking at you the whole time. They're moving their eyes, thinking, looking away all the time to check in.
I love it. Okay, next question from Tim. So what would you recommend for someone who's a non-native English speaker who's trying to speak English in their videos? Even though when I'm talking about things that connect to my passion, I still find myself having to think about how to say it in English. And we have a global international audience with us right now. So this is probably very top of mind for people who might want to be creating content in English or for English markets.
Yeah. Speaking is a flow-oriented process. It's a subconscious process. So we speak better when we're not actively thinking about it. When English isn't your first language, it can be harder because you have to think of what word to say. So I can understand the challenge with that. The thing most people try to do is they try to learn more vocabulary to improve their English. And what we find is that only complicates the issue. The question we should be asking ourselves is, how do I get more into flow when speaking so that my ideas just naturally emerge? And there's a couple of ways. You could speak with even more energy. When the energy leads and people just get super into what they're saying, the words naturally roll out. And the other is to gain more confidence with what you already have. Most people in my experience who aren't fluent have some self-consciousness around, I know I'm not fluent, it takes me more time to think of the words, and so I feel a little bit less confident than I'd like to. But allowing yourself the grace to say, actually, people appreciate my accent, my creative way of explaining things, I use more of my hands because the words aren't coming through. The more confident we can be in what we already have, the less headspace is on the self-consciousness, and the more we allow the ideas to just flow, which is what our brain does best anyway.
Great advice. Thank you for answering that. We actually had a couple other questions roll in around the same topic. So thank you for such an intentional answer. Okay, question from Rita. So she asked, are there any tips or tricks on how to be quick on my feet? I always find myself out of words in the moment and then overthinking later. I could have said something different, or yeah, definitely have been there. Like, did I say the right thing? Did I use the right word?
What's the saying? What's the saying, Michael? With the smooth is fast.
No. Oh yeah. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you try to be quick on your feet by trying to speak faster, by trying to get things out faster, you're going to have the opposite effect. There's no space for you to actually access your content. So think about it as if you want to move, you need to first relax your muscles for the muscles to engage. You can't be tight and then move. Try to hold all your body super tight and then move your arm. No, you have to relax it and move. So in speaking, it's the same thing. It's very counterintuitive, because if you're stressed and you want to be quick and you want to get to an answer, you want to jump in. But the actual way to do it is to relax your body, is to relax the muscles. So a simple technique is to take a breath before you speak. I'm asked a question, I go, and that allows me to ground myself, calm myself, connect with myself. And from there, I'm going to have much more control over what I have inside of me, over all of my content and my ability to express it. So again, and this, I could answer every single question with get some reps in, do the training on the balance bike, find a good balance bike and do the training. If you want to go to UltraSpeaking, we have plenty of balance bikes, but there are other ways to do it, of course. But the simplest way here is breathe, slow things down. So you can speak when you know what you want to say, but as soon as you're in uneven territory where it doesn't feel like you know what you're saying and you feel tense, just stop, relax. There's nothing wrong with taking a pause. It's a gift for your audience and it's a gift for yourself.
One of my public speaking coaches said that there's power in the pause. And a lot of times it allows your audience to take a breath with you, like you just mentioned. So fantastic advice. Last question. And while you answer it, I'm going to bring Justin Welsh to stage. This is from
Justin.
So she asked, there are many methods to teach memorization and choreography/presentation, but how does this translate for your method? And how do you teach, or what steps do you think are necessary to understand, and how to internalize and improvise if those don't come naturally?
Yeah, it's very common to think that improvisation doesn't come naturally. And perhaps the greatest discovery people make is that they just haven't given themselves enough of an opportunity to discover their own improvisational skills. And that's where it's scary to do what Alexis did, to just start speaking for 2 minutes on a topic and then try again for 1 minute and try again for 30 seconds. It's very common for people to go halfway through and say, oh, no, let me start over. But the willingness to try usually comes with the discovery of, oh, wow, I didn't know how I did that, but my brain just did it. And so I don't think this is a case of one method is better than the other. I think this is really a case for, we're entering a new era, one where we don't want people to come across rehearsed. We don't like it if we're just listening to a replay of somebody's thinking. We want things to feel fresh and spontaneous and live and messy, because that's what human beings are. And so I know the word improvisation is a strong word, but it really is synonymous with just trusting yourself to be in the moment, to speak in the moment. And everybody has this skill. And the way you unlock it for yourself is to practice it in a community of people that can support and encourage you to keep going.
Can you share a little bit about that, actually, around the desire for people are craving more authenticity? They're craving something that's not scripted, and we can almost like feel when it's scripted, and something screen is like, something doesn't feel maybe as authentic, or maybe I'm not connecting with this person as much. I mean, I've seen that even with public speaking, where like sometimes it can come across like so almost theatrical,
yes,
which I appreciate, but it also maybe doesn't leave as much room for that kind of vulnerable connection with the individual. So can you share maybe where that's coming from, or where you've seen that increase over time?
Yeah, Tristan, you want to take this one?
I'd like to share an image of 10 people walking on a stage, one after the other, and giving a speech. And every single one is super polished. And it's perfect. Everything is perfect. And then the 10th person comes up on stage and they look different. Maybe they don't have the suit and tie, but they are raw. They are real. They are authentic, and they make you feel. And in the audience, you poll the audience at the end, everybody's going to say, number 10 was the best speaker. That's the one I resonated with. That person made me feel something. I felt connected with them, and it felt real and authentic. But the second you say, okay, now you go on stage, where do people go? They go look for all the advice from the polished speakers. And because we want control, we want safety. So there's a gap between what we want and what we need, or what we want and what's actually valuable. But I think in the world of AI, it's accelerating the desire. The world of social media created so much fakeness that now younger generations have a sixth sense. They can pick up on it so quickly. And now AI is doing the same for writing, it's everything. There are apps now where you could be reading your script and it's going to take your picture and put it in front and make you look natural, as if you were connecting and talking with the audience. But we're going to see through that. Humans will be able to pick up on those things. And the day we can't, it's going to become even more valuable to know that somebody's not using that. We're all just craving authenticity and connection, and we're always going to find ways to reward that and connect with those who are actually doing it.
Thank you both so much for being here, for coaching me live, for being such incredible stewards of, the vulnerability around speaking and building public speaking skills. Could not recommend two better speaking coaches. So Tristan, Michael, thank you so much for being part of today's summit.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thanks so much, Alexis.
Wonderful.
A real pleasure. Thank you.